Hey, everybody, it's your friend James Shaw. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm glad you're here. We're doing what we do, which is talk to elite people who are doing elite things. And we're going to work on something that we could all get better at, which is really listening and asking questions and gaining clarity. And Hans is the guy for that. Will you tell us who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about your business?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Hans. I'm with the Gunderman Group. We're here in Oakland, California, so East Bay of the Bay Area. I did not grow up here. I'm from Seattle and found my way down here through rowing. So I was a rowing athlete in college and high school, national team, Olympic team, and I was found this place because I was training here and decided to stay after I retired from athletic and competition.
Congratulations on the Olympic. You're our second 2016 Olympian who we've had in Pivot Shift Ahead, by the way. So we
Oh, cool.
we love Olympians, and we're glad you're here. And congratulations on achieving that. And
Thank
it's,
you.
and it's now you're in this space, and
Hmm.
quite frankly, if you can succeed in rowing, you can succeed in selling real estate. There's no question about that. And so you have really though worked to perfect how you ask questions and to better connect with people, and it's worked for you. You've got a great business.
Yeah.
You sell a bunch of homes and have a very successful business. But have you always been someone that's very purposeful in connecting with others?
Always, I would say no. I was more of a grinded out, head down kind of person in athletics. It's more about what you can produce as opposed to who you know. Luckily, in most cases, there is some politics, as we all know, so that does play a role. But in general, it was like just work harder, lift the weights, row the erg, row the boat faster, and that was kind of it. So I would say once I joined real estate, I kind of took that approach, made a lot of phone calls. I was an ISA for a couple years when I started, and just 2-3 hours on Mojo and all that. And then I started to learn that there were some soft skills, some EQ, if you will, that I needed to pick up and learn if I was going to kind of take it to the next level. And that's something that I've really started to pay a lot more attention to. So maybe there's not as much quantity, but there's a lot higher quality and thus conversion when you introduce those skills into then the hustle and the work hard part of it.
So take the, hey, I'm going to get it done. I know what my job is. I'm going to be purposeful in my actions. Take that piece, but don't step on people in the process to get there. Build relationship, deepen
Exactly.
connection, grow relationship with people. Was there something that caused you to make that shift, or was it just something that kind of evolved over time?
Something that caused yeah, I mean it was really joining this team. So I was part of a different team that was based out of San Diego. I was kind of an expansion network, if you will. And then I joined the Gunderman Group, and they had a really strong emphasis on care and fiduciary and people first. And we have a saying, people, not price points, and getting to know someone more intimately. And then the real estate kind of comes out of that, and the transaction comes out of that. And so it was awkward for me in the beginning because it was so counter to what I was doing, which was sort of sales and numbers and spreadsheet driven. But when I just tried it and I gave it an honest effort, I started to see very quickly that it worked and people really responded to it. So it wasn't my natural thing to do, but I just gave it a try. I said, I'm on this team. I got in the door. They're really successful. Let me try what they do. And I've just become an adopter and a believer.
That's really smart. And so I think we find in this industry, sometimes when a client asks a question because they're curious about something in the process, we feel a need to prove how smart we are and the genius that lives inside of us.
Oh yeah.
And so we'll come back with some answer. There are some drawbacks though to that. Would you agree?
100%.
What are the drawbacks? What are the drawbacks of when a client asks a question, we just go, here, blah, 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 blah. What is the drawback to that?
Well, you might be talking over an opportunity simply, and sort of selfishly, I would say that's probably the thing you're missing. But more importantly, you're missing an opportunity to really answer the question they're asking, because we all do this where it's like, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. Okay, that's like the talk track that we all have. Like we all kind of, even though we're not, we say it, right? And so in the same way, when someone says something like, how's the market, we launch into this, soliloquy of genius that has struck us, and we've completely missed what they were actually talking about, because they likely had a specific reason or person that they were thinking of. Maybe it's themselves, maybe it's a loved one who they were thinking about. And so when you just take a second and say something like, they say, how's the market? And you say, well, it depends. Are you talking about a buyer or a seller? It could be something just that simple. And they're like, well, my mom's thinking about selling. And then boom, you're having a completely different conversation than you would have.
All right. So ask a question back is one way to deepen. The person says, how's the market? And you're going, yeah, it's interesting. It's great. It's wonderful. Now, why do you ask? Or are you asking as a buyer or a seller? Or what made you think of that? I mean, is there a specific question? That's probably the most common question we get at like the grocery store. How's the market?
Yep.
Do you have a answer that you give or a question you ask back every time, or does it change?
I usually break it depends on who I'm talking to, because if I know they're probably leaning in towards buying, then I might say something about it depends on the price point you're talking about. If they're talking about a specific city, then I can kind of refine that question a bit further. But it's generally one of two directions. It's either, are you talking about listing a home for sale, or are you talking about buying? That's sort of the one track. The other track is, it really depends on the price point you're talking about. Are you thinking about entry level? Are you thinking about the high end? Where are you going with this? Because those are very different markets right now.
What does asking questions like that do when you're interacting with someone?
It gets them to think, and there's almost inevitably a pause and oh, well, I was actually thinking about, and then they fill in the blank. And it really just actually gets at the core of what it is that they wanted to know. And I think when you are willing to go that layer or two deeper with people, and it doesn't have to be like, I'm trying to make you my best friend and share all my life secrets. It's just, I'm trying to get a little more clarity on what you actually want. Then you get an opportunity to say something intelligent or thoughtful. And whether or not they actually need to transact right now or not, they're going to bank that away in their brain. And now you've just owned a little piece of real estate of their brain physically, and then of the real estate world in their brain. So then the next time something comes up, either with a friend or a cocktail party or whatever, you're in there and they have a narrative to give at that cocktail party that's smart. And then they might even quote you if you're so fortunate. So that's what it does, in my opinion.
It seems like it makes this interaction a little bit more meaningful than just you pontificating about whatever. But I also feel like there's probably a fine line between kind of asking some connection questions or clarity questions and then like interrogating them like you're the police or the FBI. So what's the difference between a couple of clarity or connection questions versus an interrogation?
You have to eventually answer the question. You can't be ridiculous about it and just keep trying to take it down the rabbit hole further and further. And I think that's sometimes where we get hung up in the, I want to build a relationship piece. It's like, you eventually have to have an opinion and you have to say something and give them something. So I usually just think the framework's really simple. It's like, I'm trying to go 2, maybe 3 layers of questions. Like, what does that mean to you? Or how do you think about that? Is maybe a follow-up to like where I led is, relative to price point, but eventually I've got to deliver something to them, meaning, oh, the entry level market is actually on fire. We're getting, 3 to 5 offers on most houses that are presented well in that market. But when you go up above 1.5, you see the buyer pool slip and the days on market is not quite as, it's starting to expand and the, so forth and so on. So it just, eventually you got to land the plane and get somewhere with them.
It's a very Bay Area answer. The entry level market is great, but when you get over 1.5, it's tough. It's just, welcome to the Bay Area, right?
It is true. The Bay Area price points are quite high. That's true.
No doubt about it. I live in Tampa Bay, by the way, which here they call the Bay Area, and I want to tell them it's not. Can we just stop calling Tampa Bay the Bay Area? You live in the Bay Area. I live in the Tampa Bay area.
There you go.
But yeah. So all right. So that's the big one. The big one. How's the market? What's going on? And you've outlined some questions. I imagine, though, you also have people, they find out you're in real estate. They've heard all the stuff that's going on. They know rates are higher. They've heard about the NAR settlement. They've heard all these different things. They probably think your business stinks. So they're asking out of concern for you. So when people say, well, what's going on in your business? What are some questions you like to ask there? Or how do you move that conversation forward?
Yeah. I know my stats, number one. So I know, how many buyers and sellers I've done, what ratio I've done. I know my year over year stuff pretty much top of mind. Um, and I'll give an answer like, the market is down X%, but we're even, or we're up X%, or we're only down X, whatever. So I've got a stat or a data point to kind of show that I know what my business is and where it is. And then I'll add something like, I assume you've heard about this commission lawsuit thing, right? And most people nod, and then it gives you an opportunity to say like, well, what have you heard? What do you know? And then hopefully you get a chance to correct something, or to set them in the slightly different direction there, because I've heard everything from it's now illegal to pay commissions all the way up to like the market has imploded because of this. So, I've had some opportunities to have these conversations and say what it actually is.
This is great. It seems like when you just pause and ask some questions back, you're paying attention to what someone's saying. Ultimately, you're building a stronger connection with someone. Would you
Yep.
agree?
100%.
So what does that do? If you truly connect with someone, this may not be right now business, because you said you used to be the drive it and only find the right now business. Now
Yeah.
you're deepening your pipeline by deepening connection. What ultimately does that do for you and for your relationship with them?
I try to look at every interaction as I'm to your point, filling my pipeline in some way, or building allies out in the world. And that inevitably shows up in referrals, or, just general like billboard, a human billboard out there singing my praises and saying something to someone who then goes to my website, who then books a call with me. It's like, it just like those things, you put them out into the world, and the more you get out there, the more opportunities you'll end up with. And it just kind of builds and grows. It's tough, especially when you're newer or business isn't as plentiful, to want to do that. You want to close for the now business, and if it's there, you got to get it, of course. But I just think of these interactions, the real estate conversations that I have, is like, I just want to move the ball 1 yard down the field. And if I do that enough times with enough people, inevitably there's a ton of business that's going to cross the goal line every single year.
You've got to eat today, but you've got to eat in 2025 and in
Yep.
2026 and so on. So we're always looking to fill the pipeline, and you create people who go, that guy, he seemed to really care about us. I mean, it just seems like you're developing a better relationship with people.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly right. And it depends on the market you're in and the price point you're in and all of that. So you got to sort of tailor these questions, and eventually you've got to answer the question
Right.
in an intelligent way. But again, it's like, I just want to own a little bit of your brain and the real estate in your brain around real estate. And then the next opportunity, I want a little more and a little more and a little more, until you get ready to transact or send me a referral.
It
And
reminds me of,
that's the selfish part, obviously. But then there's the like, it's genuine and it's authentic, because I
yeah,
do like this business. I do care. And there's
yes,
a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of
yes.
people who are just looking for the transaction. And while I like to transact, I don't want to be that version of a real estate agent.
Listen, you still have a business to run. There's no doubt about that. But the business is a people business. If you pour into people, add value to them, build relationship with them, they'll want to do business with you, and it will all work itself out. It reminds me, when I coached Bold back in the day, we would teach that the person who asks the questions controls the conversation, and the person who talks dominates it.
Yeah.
By asking some questions, you get to kind of control the way it goes, but the person who dominates it is the one who feels like it went the best.
Yeah.
So
I
that
think
person
Gary
will step
Upland's
away.
I think of Gary just at family reunion when he interviews people on stage, like the percentage of words he asks versus I know it's an interview, but still, it's like, that's a great model. And like how he asks the questions and the inflection and stuff. It's like, people like that. You
Yep.
watch them and it's like very masterful. They're going somewhere, you can tell.
Yeah. Well, and he will ask, a lot of times he'll say, well, tell me more about that. Or what do you mean by that? Or explain that to me, what you're doing there. And you are the star. He's the connector of the
Yep.
information, but you are the hero in that. Let's make our client the hero. If
Exactly.
someone wants to become a better listener, because you have to be a great listener to ask the right question. So you want to become a great listener and therefore a great question asker. What are some tips that you've learned that you'd pass on to them?
I'm a big fan. It's funny you mentioned interrogating an FBI of Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. And in that book, there are some scripts and some models around mirroring, matching, just some basic questions and some way to structure them that you can use in real time in front of people. And I would encourage everybody to read that book or pick it back up if you haven't touched it in a while, because there's some really easy stuff in there that just it just works. And it's not just for sales, it's for, just friendship building and talking at a social function. And so to me, it's like that's it. That's number one. Come with like a model of a question or a series of questions that you can ask. Have a few in your head so that when you hear how's the market or how's your business, you have a smart response, and then you have a question right behind it, so that you're not thinking as they're talking, you're not thinking of the next thing to say, you're listening. And I think coming with that script or those couple of starters will get the ball rolling, and then it'll just be really easy and authentic.
This seems like the difference of functionary versus fiduciary, which has been a
Yep.
big topic, this spring and summer about, functionary, you just do this, do this, do this. Fiduciary, you add value. This seems like you're being a fiduciary by asking questions and listening and paying attention.
Yeah, exactly. And then when it's appropriate, take some notes. Like take notes in front of them, like at a listing appointment or a buyer consult, or even just at the open house. Like open your notes app and just type a couple notes about them, and then gives you an opportunity to follow up with something and grab their email or whatever is appropriate, right? And so yeah, it's asking those questions, you're going deeper, you're getting clarity on what it is they actually want and need, and then you can fill the holes and provide value. Or maybe it's not an appropriate time for them to transact for whatever reason, and then they go in your database.
Right. And you put them on your plan and you follow up. Okay, I've heard you say a lot of times you get clarity, get clarity, get clarity. It's okay to ask to get clarity, yes?
Yeah. What does that mean? That's a pretty easy question, right? Or what
Which,
does
by
that
the way,
mean
Gary
for you?
asks all the time. And
Yeah.
you watch him at Mega Camp. What do you mean by that? Tell me more about that. What does
Yeah.
that mean? Well, what happens next? He's getting clarity.
Because I think a lot of times when we answer questions, we're sort of fishing for the right answer. We're trying to think of what the right thing to say is, as opposed to what we actually want or mean. And we're trying to read the other person in real time and try to gauge are they into this? Is this going the right direction? And then that's first layer is sort of superficial. And then when you ask, what do you mean? Or how does that affect you? Or is that important to you? You actually kind of get rid of that top layer, and now you're into the real stuff.
It's great. This is awesome. Is there anything that we didn't talk about or chat about in this that you're real passionate about that you want people to know as they go out and become better listeners and better question askers?
I think one thing that comes to mind, I was thinking about this the other day, and I've got MREA on my desk right here, and that is all about us as business people and as entrepreneurs. But what I say to every client is, we're advisors, you're deciders. That's a saying that we use on our team all the time. And I always say, I'm on your team, not the other way around. And so I need to earn the opportunity to be the best teammate I can be and provide you the most value that I possibly can. So, because this is about you. And I remember when I was really young, my parents were shopping for a house, and I remember sort of seeing the real estate agent and always thinking that was kind of a cool job, but it was about my parents making a buy decision, not him. And that's sort of my recollection of it, but that stuck with me. And so I think as agents, if we can kind of take ourselves out of the middle of the story and put our clients there, and then how do we surround them with the right people, I think that will change your perspective and your ability to ask questions and convert and close and all the things that salespeople do. And it just gives you a completely different perspective on it.
This is really good. Do you still row?
Not actively. I work out a decent amount, but not in a boat and not on the rowing machine.
What's the biggest lesson you learned from that and for participating? 2016 was Rio, right? So you went to Rio. There's just something you'd want to teach somebody about that experience?
That even though, so we got fourth, and that is not what we went to achieve. We went for a medal, of course, so we were just shy of it. But it took me a while to really realize this. But I had a 12-year rowing career that I, for years after the Olympics, let be defined by 5.5 minutes of the final where we got fourth, and more or less is like a failure. And I realized at some point down the road, with some therapy and some coaching and some help and so forth, that 5.5 minutes does not define a 12-year career. And so when you're looking at outcomes or results, like, that doesn't necessarily show what went into it and how valuable it could be. And I draw upon my time rowing and the friendships and the people and the lessons and all that all the time. And if I was just holding on to that one outcome, I could see that decade plus of my life very, very differently. And I did for a while, frankly, and I didn't need to.
It almost seems like it'd be better to finish 10th than fourth in that moment. In that moment. Now, with the reflection that you have, the perspective would be different. But I could see that in that moment, it would be beyond frustrating, and yet to be able to stop and pause. And this is a thing I think is really important about goal setting as a whole. That when we set a goal, we set the goal, but then we go back and we put our focus on the process. And if we can succeed in the process of that, the outcome on any given day at any given time could be any number of things. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But if we know that we went through our process and, man, we nailed the process, the result is whatever the result is, but we lived in the process. I love that that's a lesson for you. And again, congratulations for your opportunity in that as well.
Thank you.
And congratulations for what you're building here. And thank you for helping us today. I so appreciate you very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.